Therapy, a machine learning therapist. This is project 1 in a video series of projects I will be showcasing on this channel. In this video, I will be displaying a sort of demo of what talking to a machine learning therapist could look like in practice, and a walkthrough of the logic. This project was inspired by and done in collaboration with my friend and colleague Omar Ashdan. Sitting outside at that table in the cool Texas breeze, my colleague and I were discussing the deep potential of machine learning in our society at large. Omar is a cog-sci major, and as such, he typically views the world through a cog-sci lens. So naturally, the conversation shifts to how such a large NLP, natural language processing model as GPT-3 could be applied in the field of psychotherapy and mental health. We started looking around and into our options and decided we must fine-tune a model of GPT-3 to get the best responses possible. Now the question is, how do we find a ridiculous amount of training therapy data? Now, as we're trying to figure out how to get that data, we tried a few things. First thing we tried was precise prompting of base GPT-3. This gave us accurate and natural responses, but it could be better. It was also missing some context and could not hold a real conversation. I then experimented and came up with a method to generate randomized conversations between GPT-3 as a client and GPT-3 as a therapist. I gathered and generated 500 examples for a dataset, and I got to fine-tuning. The results were alright. They were missing the breadth and generality of base GPT, so a fix to that could be better conversation generation and more of it. So now, we're back to square one. How do we get that massive dataset? My colleague and I were no quitters, so we scoured the internet and set our eyes on a target. This target was behind closed doors, but this is a non-issue. We kept at it, pulled a few strings, not getting into the messy details, but lo and behold, I had a web scraped 200,000 lines of raw, anonymous therapy transcripts at my disposal. And after rigorous, strenuous cleanup of the data and preparation, I was finally able to fine-tune. And then I fine-tuned, for the second time, but this time with real transcribed data. And it was, needless to say, horrible. The results were horrendous. It was all over the place, bringing stuff up that was never in context, adding random uhs and ums and uhs. This was most likely due to the fact that the transcripts were in essence transcribed audio recordings of therapy sessions. So it was natural, but dare I say, a little too natural. It's not all bad, as though my journey of fine-tuning came full circle, I had gained a deal of knowledge as a result. An NLP is nothing more than a function guesser, and in order to get the precise output, you must provide the precise input. And precisely it must be, as it seems the base model has more to offer at this point in time. So I was off to work, experimenting and prototyping the perfect prompt to give GPT. It's useful to think of these models as probability collapsers, in the sense that each new token in the input opens and closes the possible outputs, meaning that in some cases, a synonym can be all the difference. This process can be grueling, but it rewards in the end, as I had now constructed the perfect prompt for my use case. This prompt has 5 elements. The first element, descriptive statement. The first line describes the therapist Calypso, her mannerisms and personalities, and the pretense she operates under. Element 2, conversation summary. This is where the summary of the conversation so far goes. This part serves 2 main functions. For one, it gets Calypso up to speed in a brief and efficient manner, and for number 2, I had to think about how one has a conversation. When you're in a long discussion with someone, you more than likely do not remember every last thing they said down to the letter. Your brain abstracts it into understood points and themes and summaries. Similarly, I wanted to perform a process that gives Calypso an abstracted summary of the current situation with details sprinkled in. Element 3, the last 2 lines. So as you may not remember the full conversation you just had, you're more likely to remember in more detail what was just said, so I gave it the last 2 lines as a little bit extra context. And element number 4 is where the user's new input is placed, and element number 5 is where Calypso's response is recorded. So my code goes through and gathers the necessary detail to fill in the prompt and return a response. And that is the gist of it. So let's see a live example. So this is a walkthrough of the code. It's written in Vue, which is a JavaScript framework, and this defines what the page looks like, and these are where the scripts lie. So we start out by getting an API key from a file, and which is sort of key.text, and we set that up with the OpenAI. Thank you for the OpenAI documentation, it's very helpful, I really appreciate it, OpenAI. And we begin with the data. We have the username element for the username of the user, and we have the message element for their current message, and we have the messages array to show what the messages are. And we have the submit function, which takes the message and takes the username, sets it to data, pushes it into the array. It sets to the current user to the message, so the current user's message, and then it sets the message to nothing, and then it goes to reconv, which goes through each message and pushes it into a conversation array for the current conversation, and goes to optimize conversation, which then gets a summary of that conversation, and then the summary of the conversation goes to the context prompt, which is just the prompt itself, and this is the prompt that I came up with. And then it gets that context prompt and it calls GPT with that prompt, and then it gets the response. Alright, so we're here. This is the landing page. It looks really good. It looks really really pops in your face, Anyways, so you put in your username arbitrarily, pick the random name, and we ask it a question. Let's say, how can therapy help me? Alright, wait for the response. Therapy can help you in a number of ways. It can provide you with insight into your thoughts and behavior, support during difficult times, coping strategies, and dealing with stressors and skills for improving communication and relationships. Interesting message. But I want to know how, how this is different, how it's more personal. Let's see if it answers. Absolutely. Okay, thank you. Is yourself nice, W. So, that's just a bit. I can ask it, I've failed. As you guys can tell, I definitely failed. Oh, it's because it's not capitalized. But English fine. See what it says about that. Sorry to hear that. I know that difficult and discouraging it can be to fail a test, especially one that is important to you. Can you tell me more about what happened? Maybe I'll be able to offer some insight or support. And then I can talk to it and be like, well, I feel like I blanked out. Everything I studied fell out of my brain. Let's see what it says. That sounds very frustrating and scary. Why are you reaching out for help? It sounds like you can work on some skills to manage stress, anxiety, and better prepare for exams in the future. Would that be something you'd be interested in? Yes. Let's see what it says. That's great. How can I perform better under pressure? I'm just going through, giving it whatever, just stress testing it in a way. That's a great question. One thing we could work on is identifying your personal triggers for stress, anxiety, and finding ways to counter them. For example, if you tend to get more anxious when you feel like you're not well prepared, we can focus on some study tips and tricks that will help you feel more confident going into the exam. Do any of those sound helpful? Yes, they do. Can you give me some examples of those tips and tricks to help with confidence? I don't know if this is gonna work. I feel like we're getting into the territory where it'll start, breaking down. Absolutely. Okay. All right. This is good. So this is basically the gist of how this would work out. Um, in the future, what I want to do is I want to deploy this as sort of like a testing app where I would have people beta test it and I would record all of their responses and I would do sort of a reinforced learning algorithm, see what responses are good, what responses are bad, sort of in a similar way to ChatGPT. And I'm mentioning ChatGPT now, even though I started this project and finished it way back. I kind of procrastinated on it a little bit, and then with ChatGPT coming out, it kind of just reminded me to go back and finish all the stuff that I need to do, such as this video. And that's all. Honestly, if you want to see more projects, let me know. Actually, you don't have to let me know. I'm definitely gonna make more videos, so don't need to worry about that. Anyways, yeah, that's it. Let me know what you think about this project. I'm gonna put the repo in the description, and that's about all.